19 years old in 1875. Hell-bent on pushing his luck with them Longhorns up north on the Chisholm Trail Drive. He told his dear mother he promised to squander no wages on women and wine. But Charlie Siringo should never have made no big promises he couldn't mind. Now Charlie spent 15 long years on the hurricane deck of a Spanish cayuse, till the boss found that barbed wire worked cheaper than Charlie. Yep, and cut old Charlie loose. He drifted to Kansas and tended a store, but 3 years was more than he could stand. So Charlie Siringo rode up to Chicago and became a Pinkerton man. Charlie Siringo, he loved a fandango, and no one can argue with that. He would ride in a minute for the pure glory in it, then fight at the drop of a hat. Like wild Texas gringo, Charlie Siringo, he rounded 'em up mighty fine. And I am a friend of old Charlie Siringo, and Charlie's an old friend of mine. Now Charlie Siringo rode down through Durango in the summer of 1899, hot on the trail of some bad desperados wanted over the Wyoming line. The hole in the wall gang had blowed up a pay train and gotten away with the dough. Charlie spent months on the trail of the wild bunch, but let old Butch Cassidy go. And Charlie Siringo, he loved a fandango, and no one can argue with that. He would ride in a minute for the pure glory in it, then he'd fight at the drop of a hat. Like wild Texas gringo, Charlie Siringo, he rounded 'em up mighty fine. And I am a friend of old Charlie Siringo, and Charlie's an old friend of mine. Charlie Siringo was 51 years old in the summer of 1906. After 22 years as a cowboy detective, he figured he'd just call it quits. Now old Charlie understood he needed a livelihood. He couldn't get by on his looks. So Charlie remembered his Wild West adventures and wrote 'em all down in his book. Now Charlie Siringo, he loved a fandango, and no one can argue with that. He would ride in a minute for the pure glory in it, then he'd fight at the drop of a hat. That wild Texas gringo, Charlie Siringo, he rounded 'em up mighty fine. And I am a friend of old Charlie Siringo, and Charlie's an old friend of mine. That's why I'm a friend of old Charlie Siringo, and Charlie's an old friend of mine. Spanish peaks that morning. Summertime was coming to an end. I took a long, lonesome ride to Dalhart try to say goodbye to my old friend. He was happy drawing wages as a cowboy. He lightened up my campfire